Millions of people remember the question, who shot JR? In the spring of 1980, that question stopped America cold. 350 million people across 57 countries tuned in to find out the answer. It was the most watched television event of its decade. Dallas ran on CBS from 1978 to 1991. 14 seasons of Texas oil money, family betrayal, and a villain so perfectly constructed that audiences loved him more than they loved the heroes. The men and women who built that show paid prices the cameras never caught. This is where they all ended up. Larry Hagman played J.R. Ewing, the scheming, grinning, morally empty oil baron who spent 13 years lying, cheating, and manipulating his way across primetime television. Born in Fort Worth, Texas on September 21, 1931, his mother was Mary Martin, Hello Dolly, South Pacific, Peter Pan, who left him to be raised by his grandmother in Texas while she built her career in New York. He grew up understanding that fame was something people chose over the people who needed them. It was useful preparation for playing JR. Before Dallas, Hagman had played the opposite of JR for 5 seasons on I Dream of Jeannie, Major Anthony Nelson. Earnest, sweet, perpetually baffled by the genie living in his house, Dallas made him one of the most recognized faces on the planet. It also gave him enough income and enough idle time to drink 4 bottles of champagne a day for years. He called it his personality, his lubricant, his creative fuel. In 1992, doctors told him the fuel had destroyed his liver. He had advanced cirrhosis. In 1995, surgeons performed a 16-hour liver transplant at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. He kept a photograph of his organ donor above his bathroom mirror and said a prayer for him every morning. He went back to drinking secretly anyway, until a second operation in 2003 finally stopped him. In July 2012, he was diagnosed with a blood disorder that progressed rapidly into acute myeloid leukemia. He was in Dallas for the revival's second season when he died at Medical City Dallas Hospital on November 23, 2012, at 81. Linda Gray and Patrick Duffy were both at his bedside. J.R. Ewing was one of the great television villains of the 20th century. Larry Hagman was a man who spent the last 17 years of his life in bonus time, grateful for borrowed hours. Patrick Duffy played Bobby Ewing, the good brother, the one with the conscience, the one who married into the enemy family for love, the one who kept believing in people long after the evidence had gone bad. He was the moral center of a show that had very little of it. Born on March 17, 1949 in Townsend, Montana, the son of a tavern owner. In 1985, he left Dallas. The ratings collapsed without him. The producers called. He came back. In what became one of television's most discussed creative decisions, the entire previous season was retroactively explained as a dream sequence. It was audacious and absurd, and it worked, because Patrick Duffy was the kind of actor audiences simply needed to believe in. Then, on November 18, 1986, while filming season 10, 2 19-year-old men walked into the tavern his parents owned in Boulder, Montana, and shot them both. Terrence and Marie Duffy were found on the floor by customers who stopped in after a shift change. Duffy said his father had thrown the men out of the bar earlier that evening, and they had come back. He processed the loss through his Buddhist faith. He was married for 34 years to Carlin Rosser, a dancer he met when he was 21. She died unexpectedly in 2017. He told an interviewer 3 years later that he still considered himself a married man. Patrick Duffy is alive today at 76. Linda Gray played Sue Ellen Ewing, J.R., long-suffering wife, a woman trapped in a marriage to a man who humiliated her publicly and repeatedly, who fought her way out of alcoholism and back into dignity across more than a decade of storylines. She played her without self-pity and without sentimentality. Born in Santa Monica in 1940, Gray had spent years before Dallas as one of the most successful commercial models in Los Angeles. In her late 30s when the show began, an age when Hollywood typically stops calling women back, Dallas called and she became one of the most recognizable women in the world. When Larry Hagman was dying in November 2012, Linda Gray was in the room. She later said he was her best friend for 35 years, the Pied Piper of life, the most creative and generous person she had ever known. Gray is alive today at 84. She works, travels, and has spent years as a UN Goodwill ambassador. Sue Ellen found her way out of the mansion in the end. Linda Gray never needed one. Jim Davis played Jock Ewing, the family patriarch, the man who had built the empire from nothing and whose shadow fell over every character on the show. Davis had served in the Army during World War II and spent decades as a working character actor before Dallas made him famous. He had been suffering from severe migraines for years that nobody on set had connected to anything serious. In 1981, doctors identified the cause, a brain tumor that had been growing without diagnosis. Jim Davis died of brain cancer on April 26, 1981, at 71. During production of the show's 4th season, the producers refused to recast Jock Ewing. In Season 5, it was revealed that the character had died in a helicopter crash in South America. The ranch felt his absence for the rest of the run. Barbara Bel Geddes played Miss Ellie, Jock's wife and the conscience of South Fork Ranch. She had been nominated for an Academy Award in 1948 and had originated the role of Maggie the Cat on Broadway in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. She was the only nighttime soap actress ever to win a Primetime Emmy Award. She was also a lifelong smoker. In March 1984, a major heart attack took her off the set, and Donna Reed replaced her for 6 months. She came back. She stayed through 1990 and watched the show end around her. Barbara Bel Geddes died of lung cancer on August 8, 2005, at her home in Northeast Harbor, Maine, at 82. Larry Hagman told reporters she had been the rock of Dallas, the glue that held the whole thing together. He had spent years trying to get her to quit smoking. The doctors finally managed it after the heart attack. By then, the damage was already done. Ken Kercheval played Cliff Barnes, J.R., Buz's lifelong enemy, the man on the other side of every scheme, every lawsuit, every betrayal. He was the only character besides J.R. to appear in all 14 seasons of the original run. Born in Walcottville, Indiana, on July 15, 1935, Kercheval had been a Broadway actor before Dallas, appearing in Cabaret and Fiddler on the Roof. In 1994, he wrote a first-person piece for People magazine about his treatment for lung cancer, urging readers to quit smoking. He returned for the 2012 revival and faced J.R. Ewing one final time. Ken Kercheval died on April 21, 2019, at his home in Clinton, Indiana, of pneumonia, at 83. He is buried at Pisgah Cemetery in Vermilion County, Indiana, the same state he had left as a young man to become an actor, and the same state that took him back in the end. Victoria Principal played Pamela Barnes Ewing, Bobby's wife, the woman who married into the enemy camp and tried to hold 2 warring families together through sheer force of love. She left Dallas in 1987 at the height of its run, walked away from one of the most watched shows on television, and never fully explained why. She became a successful entrepreneur, built a skincare company, and largely disappeared from public life on her own terms. She is alive today at 74. Charlene Tilton, who played Lucy Ewing and was 19 years old when the show began, is alive at 66. Steve Canale, who played ranch foreman Ray Krebs for all 14 seasons, died on July 22, 2024, at 76, of complications from a stroke. They rest in Texas, in Indiana, in Maine, and in a Montana town that took a father and a mother on an ordinary November night. The ones still walking carry what was given to them, the fame, the loss, the borrowed years. Dallas told the story of a family held together by money and torn apart by everything else. The people who told that story carried versions of the same contradiction for the rest of their lives. The oil wells are long dry. The lights at South Fork still burn.